So your playground was the biggest city in the world.
Yep.
The concrete jungle.
The concrete jungle.
Yep.
You know, that's the stuff of Alicia Keys' songs.
Yeah.
This is gonna hurt.
It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
When an adversary stands in front of us, it's easy to prepare for a fight. Whether that fight is physical, verbal, or emotional, we can brace ourselves for the stormy seas that lie ahead, sizing our opponents up and making sure that we have the tools that we need that gives us the best chance for victory. How can we create a battle plan for an invisible enemy? We don't know how big they are, we certainly don't know how many are in their army, and we don't know how to attack. All we can do is prepare the best that we know how and hope that it's good enough. One weapon that should be the first in our arsenal is hope. Without hope, there is no need to fight. Without hope, you have lost the war before it even began. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Failace, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do here and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, and now you can join. Don't forget to ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and also follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to. On tonight's episode of the Suffering Podcast, we welcome Carin Rosado to discuss the suffering of lymphoma. Sort of just gives it away off the bat.
Yeah, but that's the first time someone with a vowel at the end of their name, you got it right away. I mean,
that's because it's not Italian.
I know.
That's the problem. But what you're going to find is sitting in front of me is a warrior who was hit with an unseen battle, but is ready to go on the attack. Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as police, but we do trust them. So go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. So Carin, thank you so much for joining us. I know you watched a couple of our shows, and we try to
and thank you for still coming in after watching our shows.
We take a question from our audience every week. This week's social media question comes from Aries Peace. It says, how has your views of your adversaries changed? Over time, you know, you get stuck in a moment with enemies, and over time, it either elevates or it sort of, the volume gets turned down on it. So have any enemies that you've had in the past, how has your views changed?
I think more that it really comes from any angle, right? You don't think that sometimes your loved ones can become your enemies. Yeah. So that's
they become your biggest enemy.
Yeah.
You got that right.
Yeah. And sometimes you gotta take a step back, it comes from care or love, but sometimes it's just, they just don't want you to move up in life. They don't want you to grow. They want you to stay stagnant where they are. So that's kind of I think the hardest part when it comes to enemies. But like you said, it grows and it decreases over time. So I think through what I've been with, I've seen a lot more enemies and in places I've never thought that I would be fighting against. And sometimes the enemy got to look inside you too. Like, what am I fighting myself against?
Sometimes we're our own worst enemies.
Yeah,
if you want to, we're our own worst adversaries. Mike, what do you think?
Whether it's time heals all wounds, I don't know, but I'm 57 years old. I don't have much time to hate people anymore.
Yeah.
When, can you give me a time so I can figure that out?
We'll have to call Heather Campbell.
Yeah, she'll know.
She'll know.
She'll know.
She'll know when I'm going to die. No, it's just, we've been through so much. It's menial bullshit now. I really don't care.
Yeah.
You don't like me. I'll still get along with you.
Yeah. I think as you grow.
Yeah, exactly.
You kind of just learn to kind of ignore them, or sometimes try and send them love and light, which is hard. It's a lot of practice.
I just let it roll off my back now. It's like, so what?
Well, you've seen that with Mike DePalma, okay? Mike DePalma, he's been on our show numerous times, and, we at one time, the three of us were very, very tight. Mike and I sort of got into it, and we didn't talk for 6 months. It's not that I saw him as an enemy or an adversary, but we just didn't talk. And it really bothered me. And as time moves on, it was a short duration. It wasn't anything long. But as time moved on, I thought to myself, how stupid is this?
Exactly.
And I miss my friend.
Yeah.
But my answer, I've talked about this on the show. The guy who shot at me, I'll say his name openly because I actually want him to contact me. His name's Anthony Vocatoro. He he shot at police officers multiple times, shot at me, and kind of put my life into a downward spiral. And for a long time, I hated him because I thought he really destroyed my life. Until I was able, and I'm talking probably 7-8 years after the incident, I started thinking, I'm like, well, and I think it was when we were doing this show, I started thinking, what did that guy have to go through in order to get to that level to shoot at police officers? He wasn't shooting at Kevin Donaldson. That was something I accepted. He wasn't shooting at Kevin Donaldson. He was shooting at police officers. And what was going on in his life where he got to the depths where obviously he didn't want to live anymore. He's shooting at people with guns. But
Not a bright idea.
I got to be honest with you. When I finally got to the point where I forgave him, the weight off of my shoulders was so profound and enormous that I felt free because he didn't have any more power over me. Mm-hmm. So my view has changed vastly over somebody who changed my life vastly, right. and it was a good thing. You know, believe it or not, getting shot at was a good thing. I'm here with my best friend, and we get to do this show every single week. We get to talk to great people like you.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
So, Aries, thank you so much for sending that one in. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. We are very appreciative of all the questions that you send in. So, Carin, you were introduced to me through a friend of the show, our friend Rory, who is actually in the control room right now.
Unfortunately, he's stuck in there with Drew.
Drew ate tacos, too, and I feel really bad for you.
I brought empanadas in again.
But Carin was so gracious, and you brought in, you did the Italian move, even though you're not Italian.
Yeah.
You brought in food, which, you know, it's always the way to somebody's heart.
Yeah. Well, I am Puerto Rican. The culture is a little bit similar.
Well, so Andrew makes us bring in a certain amount of Puerto Ricans every month.
We reached our quota.
Yeah, we got to hit a quota. But I've spoken to you numerous times. You have this wonderful outlook on life in the face of true adversity. Why don't you give our audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm 34, I think. I'm 34.
Around
Don't
there.
do the math. Yeah, somewhere around there.
After 40, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it.
I've been a paramedic for a little over 10 years. I'm a baker. I love to bake. I like to do a lot of crafts as like my side hobbies. And I just love spending a lot of time with people I care about, with my friends. It's like a big part of me, just being surrounded by a lot of positive people and family.
Well, I saw some of the things online about some of the crafts you create. What is it about creating crafts that gives you, because it seems like it gives you a little bit of peace.
Yeah.
I was going to say peace of mind.
Yeah. A lot of people, when it comes to craft, they don't have the patience for it. But it does. It's something about figuring out like a puzzle almost, right? So it just gives me a lot of peace, like you said. Like there's crafts that I've taught myself. If anybody is in the cricket world, like that's kind of what I've been doing. And I taught myself how to use it and expand on all the different types of crafts. It's a machine. It's a vinyl cutting machine.
Okay.
So with that, you cut vinyl that you can put on to anything. You put on posters, on shirts, mugs, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We may have to talk after this.
I was going to say, could you make a suffering podcast?
Absolutely.
You know, it's funny. I love, believe it or not, I love to sew.
Oh, nice.
Like, you know, like if you got to rip it.
You lived on your own too long.
That's
exactly what that is, because that's how I know how to sew.
But I just sit there, like, if you got a hole in your jeans or something, I'd sit there and I'd sew it. It was so peaceful to me. Now, threading a needle gets me absolutely out of my mind. I can't thread a needle anymore. And I can't do it.
I need a new,
an obscene amount of patience.
I have to get a new prescription for my glasses.
Yeah.
And I really can't thread a needle now. I got to get one of my kids to do it. I'm like, here, take care of this for me, buddy.
I mean, you close your eye and you're go like this, hold it up to the light. I can't do it anymore.
So do you remember when you were going through your darkest times, Mike, things that gave you a little bit of peace?
Yes, exactly.
And they're hobbies.
Yeah.
You know, a craft is a hobby in essence. And me, like, I tried to teach myself everything. I taught myself how to plate braid. Okay, you don't use plate braiding for anything else but bullwhips, and I got 2 of them. I taught myself how to forge metal. I taught myself how to make moonshine, which at the time wasn't a good idea. And it didn't last very long. I know Rory's a big moonshine guy.
An even Spamalot shaking his head at you.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like an arsonist building his own matches. Yeah, it's really, really bad. But it gives you some peace. It calms you down. Mm-hmm. Were you always crafty growing up?
Yeah, I think my mother's side of the family, it's where all the artistic talent is. They play instruments, they sing, they bake, they do all the other crafts before cricket came into the world. So it kind of got passed down to me, and my mom being a single mother of 3 girls, like she always was trying to push crafts with us to keep us busy, but also to expand that creativity. So yeah, growing up, I did any little craft that I could get my hand on, and baking from scratch used to be.
Was it to keep you busy or to shut you up?
Both. Definitely both. With my mom, yeah, both. Keep us busy.
But that's the cool thing about my kids. Like I'm very sports minded, but I'm also very creative.
Right.
My youngest is ultra creative. He's good at sports.
Yeah.
My oldest is really good at sports, and he does like to create. Like I like to cook. I like to just whatever I find interesting, I'll always try to figure it out. And it occupies me pretty much. It occupies my mind because my mind has a tendency, like it's a Jackson Pollock painting up here.
Yeah.
And that sort of focuses me.
It's a melting pot.
It is. It's bad. It's a Salvador Dali painting.
Yeah. So if you ever try and meditate, it's hard to quiet the mind.
Yeah. Well, I do meditate every day.
Yeah. But in crafts, there's nothing going on in my mind.
Right.
Like it's just that it's kind of like a meditation. But outside of that, like you said,
But it's cool.
Carin, believe me, there's nothing going on in Kevin's mind either.
So meditation is an interesting thing because I'm a person of extremes.
Yeah.
So I either meditate in extremely hot sauna, steam, or go. And now's my favorite time because I go out in the cold.
Wow.
Because once you break concentration, you either get hot or cold.
Right.
And that's how I know it's not working.
Right.
And I got to refocus and really concentrate on my breathing. So where'd you grow up?
A little bit of everywhere. I was born in Harlem. Lived there for a small part of my life. I lived in Queens Village, Bushwick, Brooklyn, uptown Manhattan, almost every borough, I think, but Staten Island.
So let's just say you grew up in New York.
Yeah. All
New York
around
City
New York.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And so you were born in Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the hospital in Harlem or did you live in Harlem?
Both. So born in Mount Sinai, Harlem, and then lived on 108th Street.
I think that's where Charlie Cifarelli was born.
Mount Sinai.
Yeah, I
believe so.
I think that's where he was born.
Nice.
And so you've always had this love for the city?
Yeah, I did. Growing up, I mean, a lot of people don't let their kids like go on the train very young, but I was like 9, 10 years old, taking the 6 train up to Harlem to go visit my family by myself.
And your parents were okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, my mom was a single mom. She worked a lot. She did train us very young to be very responsible. I mean, since I was in the 3rd grade, and my sister was in 2nd grade, we were walking to school by ourselves. So she didn't really have the choice. Like we had to grow up a little bit faster than normal. And taking the trips to Harlem was growing up even faster.
Is your mother still with us?
Yes.
So do you ever speak to her? It's like, Mom, what were you thinking? You let me walk the streets of the city alone.
Yeah, I mean, the way my family grew up, it was kind of like all the kids grew up fast, and it was just like let them learn. And it's crazy because I look at where the world is now, and back then, me being 8, 9, 10, taking the train to Harlem, I never felt not safe.
That's because you grew up there. Okay, that's a big thing. So if I drive into, say, Newark, there are places in Newark that I do not feel safe.
Yeah.
All right, I'm always on edge. But take me into Atlantic City. There is nowhere in Atlantic City that everybody's like, it's a horrible place. I'm like, it's just Atlantic City. It's always been bad.
Yeah.
but it gives you world skills.
Yeah.
Or
situational
awareness.
awareness.
Yeah, exactly. So like kids today that are playing, they're on social media all day or just playing video games or anything. They're not going to have situational awareness, like you said.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting lifestyle. So your playground was the biggest city in the world.
Yep.
The concrete jungle.
The concrete jungle.
Yep.
That's the stuff of Alicia Keys' songs.
Yeah.
Now, as you moved on, did you have any drive to go in any direction? Did you figure out what you wanted to do early?
Kind of. I knew I wanted to help somebody or being in the helping career to anybody. So I didn't know which direction at that time. And then I was like, well, I really like kids and I kind of like the medical field. And then someone's like, well, why don't you be a pediatrician? And I'm like, oh, that's kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, right? So I'm good with school, but I kind of like got a little ADD, right? So it's hard to stay focused. So I'm really good with hands-on learning. So that's when I was like, maybe I could go take the EMT course. I could be in the medical field and then learn things behind closed doors while I continue that journey to become a pediatrician at the time. So that's kind of what I started to do. And then going through that journey, I spoke to a lot of nurses, a lot of doctors, and like, don't you want to be like a mom one day? Like, don't sell your whole life to being a doctor. You know, you give up a lot of freedom. Why don't you become a nurse or a nurse practitioner or a PA? Like, if you want to go for the doctor, go for it. But you give up so much of your life. You know, it's a big sacrifice. And so I thought about that. And because I have so much connection and love for my family and always wanting to be around them, I'm like, well, I really wouldn't want to sacrifice that big chunk of my life. So I'm like, all right, let me figure something else out. So then I was like, I'll be a nurse practitioner. And
still not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad at all.
And then I upgraded to paramedic. I loved working in the field. I kind of got a little comfortable there. I was still taking my classes, but very, very, very slowly. And then I took a break to try and regroup financially. And then there just became more barriers in between. And I was like, well, it's not a bad gig working in the street. You know, I'm still in the medical field. I'm still helping people.
You were riding the bus at the time?
Yeah.
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 So see some nasty stuff going on in the city.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Without doubt.
Seen it all.
Yeah.
That's the best place to get like a big variety of calls, you know?
Hands-on training, like you said.
Exactly.
And your first year, guaranteed, every DOA you had was on the toilet.
Some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And naked.
and naked. Yeah. You go out of this world. Most of
The
them
way
go
you
out
came
naked.
in.
Yeah. You go out shitting in your pants and
I
you
was
come in shitting in your pants and you go out shitting in your pants.
I was just telling somebody a story that like my first year on the job, every DOA I had was on the toilet. It was almost like comedy because they're like, oh, they're on the toilet. Oh, I guess they're dead. They're done.
Yeah.
So we go to this call and it's like, where's your wife? Oh, she's on the toilet. I'm like, oh, God, here we go.
Yeah.
I walk up there and she's in diabetic shock. She's not dead, but she is in mid stride of going to the bathroom. And it was not, and she was a big gal.
Yeah.
And it was not pleasant.
Yeah.
And I had a sergeant walk in he was training somebody on FTO and he goes, oh, Donaldson, open the window. You get in there. And he goes and runs downstairs and she's like, we're not even there.
Wow.
Like we're not even there. And I think she had chili the night before. It was so
smells
bad.
are really, well, they were really hard for me. I still can't smell, but
You're lucky if you're going to continue with being a paramedic.
yeah. Before, I mean, any little smell and I'm just
I always said the worst smell to me is like the 2-week unattended death.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty
That's
my
the
God,
first time I
that is-
almost actually threw up.
That is the worst.
Well,
Yeah.
well, on that job, I'm going to pose this question to everybody here. What is the worst smell?
The DOA that's been there.
Or is that the one thing that would make you actively vomit?
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
had two. I've had one inside the house and one in an autopsy that was actually green, like the Incredible Hulk. His skin was like the Incredible Hulk. It was like, did somebody paint him green? It was just the bacteria. And he was so bloated. And when she finally popped to get inside and all that came out, I had to leave. But there's a trick for anybody out there in the field. If you I started carrying Vicks.
Vicks vapor rub.
Peppermints
I heard
always
that.
work.
Yeah.
Right on your nose.
I used to have to go to a lot of autopsies.
Yeah.
And peppermints always worked well for me.
Yeah.
But at the point, like, they never bothered me because I saw them as a science experiment. I was able to separate their humanity
Yeah.
from them. It's just it's a science experiment. Okay,
Yeah.
Their rib cages. You forget that they used to be human. Mike, is there anything that made you actively vomit or come close?
You step in dog shit on the way to the call. So
Really?
I can't stand it. But no, seriously, the unattended death and autopsies. I mean,
Yeah.
autopsy. One of the first unattended deaths I went on, somebody went to mistake number one, step over the body. They hit the body and the body.
Ooh.
Maggots were coming out of the body.
Nice.
I'm like,
I've had that.
I always got it when somebody was throwing up. I cannot handle somebody throwing up around me.
you're gonna
Is
throw
it
up
the
too.
sound or the smell?
I think it's the sound.
Yeah.
It's the sound of somebody. I will immediately start dry heaving.
Yeah.
So there was a poor guy, and he was sick as a dog, and he's throwing up.
Yeah.
And my partner's in front of him. He's got a bucket in front of him, and he's and I'm behind him, and I'm trying not to make a noise. I'm like, it was so bad. I never actually vomited though.
Yeah.
Even when they cut, I've made people vomit in autopsies.
How'd you do that?
I started eating when they cut into the bowel tract
Oh God.
because it didn't bother me. So I would do it purposely because I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And I would bring, meanwhile, somebody's loved one's dead. But
Yeah.
so I started.
Different mindset for emergency personnel.
I would eat crackers or
Yeah.
whatever I had. I'd take out a sandwich or something and I'd start eating it in front of them, looking over the body with the sandwich and stuff. And you'd see people in the back of,
The guy who used to work with said the one thing he couldn't handle was shit out of water.
Although I did step in human shit, and that screwed me up psychologically.
Yeah, without doubt.
Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, I've had dogs my whole life, so
Yeah.
I've stepped in it millions of times.
Right.
The one time I stepped in human shit that I know of, I had to throw away my shoes. No matter how much bleach I walked through, water, wet grass, didn't matter.
Yeah.
And
Once that smell gets in your nose, though, it stays there for.
oh,
Yeah. That
You know-
one DOA, I tell you, I think that's stuck in my, I kept in the back of my throat, in my hair. I tried to eat lunch after that, and I'm like, I just still smell it. I can't eat like this.
or the other thing is burning flesh. Have you ever gone to a house fire?
Yeah.
You know, and the people they're actually almost still on fire.
Yeah. It's a
And
very weird
you're
smell.
grabbing them, and I had to pull a lady out of a house one time, and I had just like dead, burned skin all over my uniform.
Yep.
And
that was
it just never gets out of your nose.
Yep.
pulling a body out of the Passaic River. That one was pretty bad too, because the skin just peeled right off.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the bacteria.
Yeah. So what drove you? So you're in this break. How did the FDNY come into the picture?